All right, Rabosai, good morning. Welcome to today's daf. I hope everybody had a beautiful Shabbos, a great zichus to be able to share this daf with you from Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh. So today's daf is daf Yud Ches. I want to begin by thanking our sponsors, our TALMUD Torah sponsors, for the month of Shevat. Mrs. Bracha Strimber, in commemoration of the upcoming yahrzeit of her husband, Avraham ben Kalman Eliezer HaLevi Livracha. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah and the family in Nechama. To thank Avi Tobias for dedicating all the Shirim and Drashos this month in honor of the Shir, in honor of the Ribono Shel Olam's incredible Torah. And to thank our Week of Learning sponsors, Gobbie Shayna Cohn, in commemoration of the upcoming yahrzeit of Shayna's father, Avraham ben Kalman Eliezer HaLevi Livracha. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah and the family in Nechama. And Abosi, with that, let us begin. We have an incredibly beautiful daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Yud Ches 18, and we are picking up on Yud Zayin Amud Beis 17b, 4 lines up from the bottom. Says the Gemara, Tan Rabbanon, Kishim she'amru asr legaleach b'moed. In the same way that Chazal said that you're not allowed to go ahead and shave on Chalamayid, kach asr lital tzi parnayim b'moed. So too, again, you're not permitted to go ahead and cut your nails on Chalamayid as well. So the Gemara is equating the cutting of the nails to giluach, to shaving. Steve Rabbi Yehuda, these words are Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Mati, Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's mutter. It's mutter. You can go ahead and cut your nails on Chalamayid. So the Gemara says, "Ukashem shamru avel asur legalech me avlo," in the same way that we said that an avel, a mourner, is not permitted to go ahead and shave during the days of his avelos. Kach asur lital tziparnayim b'mei avlo. So too, he is not permitted to go ahead and cut his nails during his avelos as well. Div Rabbi Yehuda. So we'll say, so again, Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that essentially the strictures of I should say that cutting your nails and shaving are kind of in the same bucket. So therefore, by Chalamai, where you're not allowed to shave, you're also not allowed to cut your nails. By Avelus, where you're not allowed to shave, you're also not allowed to cut your nails. Now, in both of these cases, Rabbi Yossi says it's mutter. So Rabbi Yossi, therefore, will allow you to cut your nails during Avelus, and will also allow you to cut your nails during Chalamai. Amr Ula. Ula says, Halacha Rabbi Yehuda ba'avel, v'halacha Rabbi Yossi b'moed. So Ula says, the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda by Avelos, namely by Avelos, you're allowed to go ahead and cut your nails, but ultimately the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi, the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda by Avel, that you are not allowed to go ahead and cut your nails during Avelos, but the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi by Chalamayid, that you're allowed to cut your nails on Chalamayid. Shmuel says, no, halacha Rabbi, top of Yud Ches, halacha Rabbi Yossi, b'moed u'ba'avel. So both say, interestingly enough, Shmuel says that halacha follows Rabbi Yossi both by Chalamayid as well as by Avelos, which means that what Shmuel is saying is that halacha l'maisa, you're allowed to cut your nails during Avelos, and you're allowed to cut your nails on Chalamayid as well. Now, why is this? Amar Shmuel, halacha kedivrei hamekel be'evel, because both say there's a general principle. The general rule is that the halacha follows the lenient opinion by Hilchos Avelos. Now the truth is, this is not a unique idea. Hilchos Avelos, the overwhelming majority of them are dirabbanans. So essentially what the Gemara is saying is, when you have a machlokes in a dirabbanan, safek dirabbanan lahakel. Machlokes in a dirabbanan, we'll side with the lenient opinion. Now what's interesting about this Gemara is that, again, the conclusion of the Gemara seems to be that both by Chalamayid as well as by Avelos, one is permitted to go ahead and cut their nails. And in fact, this is the halacha. Now, interestingly enough, by Avelos, what we generally say is you could cut your nails if they're getting in the way of activities of daily living. If it's not getting in the way of activities of daily living, we leave it. Chalamayid is actually very interesting. The Mechaber paskins that one is permitted to go ahead and cut their nails on Chalamayid, but the Ramah is machmir. The Ramah says our minhag today is not to cut nails during Chalamayid. He says, unless, of course, a woman's going to the mikvah and she needs to cut her nails, to avoid any type of chatzitza, interposition issues, interposition issues, chatzitza issues. But otherwise, the Ramah says we are machmir and we do not cut our nails on Chalamayid. So the Gemara tells an interesting story. Pinchas achod de Mar Shmuel Isra be Milsa. Unfortunately, Pinchas, the brother of Mar Shmuel, Isra Milsa literally means something happened to him. Now Rashi explains the Pinchas Hava Avel. So in fact, again, the Gemara later on will explain that Pinchas's son passed away. Pinchas lost a child, Rachmana litzlan. So Pinchas is sitting Shiva. All Shmuel, so Shmuel, his brother, comes Lemishal Taima Mine to be Menachem Aval. Now again, Lemishal Taima Rashi Ledabe Alibo de Pinchas to give him words of consolation. Give him words of consolation. So Shmuel comes to give chizik, to be Menachem Aval, to console the mourner. So what happens? Chazinhu letarfi dahavanefishin. Shmuel walks in and he sees that his brother Pinchas, who is sitting Shiva, Pinchas's nails were very long. They're very long. Amrle amaylo shakalta luhu. So Shmuel says to his brother, why don't you cut your nails? Because remember, again, I both say, Shmuel was the one who just paskin that the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi, both by Avelos as well as by Chalamayid. But here, this is an Avelos case. The halacha always follows the lenient opinion by Avelos. So Shmuel says to his brother, why don't you cut your nails? Amrle, ibidide hava. Mi mizalzolas beikulehai. So Pinchas says back to his brother, tell me, brother, if this would have happened to you, if you would have been the one sitting Shiva, would you be so mekel? Would you be so mekel? Would you just go ahead and be so mekel to cut your nails? Then I will say, now what just happened over here was something amazing, dramatically, tragically amazing, which is Pinchas said to Shmuel, if you had lost a child and you were sitting Shiva, would you cut your nails? So Havi kishgaga shiyotze milifnei hashalit. So the Gemara uses this expression in Koheles, kishgaga shiyotze milifnei hashalit, which literally means like a mistake that came out from before the ruler. So the idea over here, the Gemara uses this expression when great people say things. The words of a great person has an impact. So here again, Pinchas said, Shmuel, if you were sitting Shiva for your child, and afterwards, again, the Isra Be Milsa B'Shmuel. Unfortunately, Shmuel suffered a loss. And now Shmuel was sitting. Again, the Gemara is highlighting the idea that great people, tzaddikim, have to be very careful with their words, because their words carry weight, and their words create reality. So here, Pinchas didn't chas v'shalom mean anything negative towards his brother, but lamaisa, what he said had an incredibly dramatic impact. So the Gemara says, "Ve'israel also b'Shmuel, all Pinchas achol mishal taima minei." So now Shmuel's sitting Shiva, and Pinchas, the brother, comes to Menachem Aval. So what happened? Shaklinhu litarfe chavatinu la'ape, Amar lei. Lest lechabris krusalis fasayim. So what happens? That's actually dramatic. So Pinchas walks in to now be Menachem Aval by his brother Shmuel. What did Shmuel do? Shmuel had cut his nails and he threw the nails at Pinchas. And he said to his brother, don't you know that there is a covenant that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has affected with the lips? Don't you know that words have power? Don't you know that words have an impact? Don't you know that when you say something, you have to be mindful of what it is that you're saying? So Shmuel was angry at his brother, understandably so. So there's two things happening over here. Number one, he threw the nails at Pinchas, showing that he did cut his nails, even during Shiva. That's number one. And number two, he gave him Musar. How do you not know the impact of your words? How do you know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a covenant with the lips? How do you know that our words have an impact, that our words have a meaning? Shene'emar, Vayomer Avraham el Na'arav, Shvu lachem po'im hachamar, V'ani v'hanar ne'acha atko, V'nishtachave v'nashuva aleichem. So listen to this. Where does the Gemara glean the idea that the words of a tzaddik have a binding effect? By the Akedah. Avraham said to his lads, remember again, this was a reference, the Akedah, Avraham traveled with both Yitzchak and Eliezer. And Avraham says to his lads, who's actually Eliezer and Yishmael, Shvu lachem po'im hachamar, you both stay here. Va'ani va'nar nechat, me and the lad, we're going to go over there to Hara Moriah, to Hara Bayis. V'nishtachave, we'll prostrate. V'nashuva aleichem, and we will return to you. Now Avraham said we will return. Both me and Yitzchak will return. So you see, what do you see from here? You see from here that halacha l'maisa, his words were upheld. Both Avraham and Yitzchak returned to Eliezer and Yishmael, v'stayim ilsa. And indeed it worked out, the hadar tarvayu, that ultimately, again, both of them returned. So it's actually pretty incredible. So here is the raya, here is the proof of bris krusa imas vasayim, or lisvasayim, that there is a covenant that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has made with the words of the righteous, that the words of the righteous have an effect. They carry weight. They create realities. Absolutely incredible. Savramine, diyad in deregalo. Now the truth is, Rabbi said, we're jumping back for just a moment. When we spoke about the idea that when Shmuel said that the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi, that you can cut your nails even during Shiva, we assumed right now that only refers to your nails, to the nails of your hand, not to your toenails. Ultimately, again, now Rashi points out, because if the nails on your hand grows long, it's moos, it's disgusting. It doesn't look nice, it looks unkempt. But your toenails, no one's going to see anyway. No, in fact, Shmuel said, no, it's not true, that the heter to cut your nails during Avelos is both by your fingernails as well as by your toenails. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi Amar Av, ubignustra. Furthermore, ubignustra aser. However, you can't use a scissor. You can't use a scissor. In other words, you could cut it by mouth, you could cut it by hand, but lamaisa, you can't go ahead and use a kli. You can't use a scissor. So Shman bar Abba says, one time I was with Rabbi Yochanan in the base medrash on Chalamayid, v'shaklinhu letarfe bishinei v'zarkinhu, and I saw that Rabbi Yochanan bit his nails. Right, he cut, quote unquote, he cut his nails by biting them, and he threw the nails. So the Gemara says, Shma mina tlos. You could learn three things from this episode. Number one, Shma mina motor li tabel tzipar nine b'chalosh Moed. Number one, you learn from here that you're allowed to cut your nails on Chalamayid, because again, Shevat say it's always interesting to see that from the Gemara's perspective, here you have Shmuel saying that halacha follows Rabbi Yossi, namely that you can go ahead and cut your nails on Chalamai, you can go ahead and cut your nails during Avelos, during Shiva even. During Avelos. Now again, I'll point out, I'll get back in just a moment. Yet you see, from the Gemara's perspective, the real impact is when you bring a story which backs up this halachic position, which makes sense, because the story tells you that this is not simply something that was said in the base medrash, but rather ultimately this was something that was actively acted upon. So you learn from here three things. Number one, Shma mina, number one, Rabbi Yochanan cut his nails on Chalamayid. You see from here, in fact, Paskin Allah Chalamaisa, you can cut your nails on Chalamayid. Number two, Ein Bahem Mishum Mios, that there's nothing quote unquote disgusting with going ahead and removing your nails, even with your mouth, right? Even with your teeth. Number three, Ushma mina motul zarkon, that after you cut your nails, you're allowed to throw them. Ini, is that so? Vatanya, we learned, Shlosha Dvarim Nemru B'tzipar Naim. There are three halachos that are said regarding nails. Hakovran Sadik. If you go ahead and after you cut your nails, you bury the nails, you're a tzaddik. Sarfan. If you burn them, you're a chassid. Zarkan. But if you just kind of throw them where you are, Rasha. And you are Rasha. What's wrong with just throwing your nails down? Taima Mai. Shematavor Alein Isha Ubra. Vitapil. What's the concern? If you cut your nails and you just leave them in place, what could happen? A pregnant woman could step on them and chas v'shalom lose her pregnancy. So we'll say, before we get into that, so the Gemara says, how was Rabbi Yochanan therefore able just to cut his nails and throw them down? To which the Gemara says, Isha be'midrash lo shchicha. Ultimately, again, a woman wasn't normally found in the base medrash. Again, Bismana Gemara, we live in different times today, right? But again, Bismana Gemara, a woman wasn't found in the base medrash. So therefore, again, Rabbi Yochanan didn't feel there was any concern after he bit his nails, right, to go ahead and throw the nail down, because a woman's not going to walk over it. There were no women in the base medrash. Furthermore, the Gemara says, but sometimes maybe they sweep the nails out, and maybe the nails will go out into the street, and a woman does pass by in the street. To which the Gemara says, Kevan de ishtani. Ultimately, again, the danger that a nail poses is only when literally, again, it's in the original place that it fell. But once it's moved to a different location, it no longer poses any type of danger. So I will say, the idea over here, just to speak about this just a moment. So first of all, what we have, but say just from a halachic perspective, is that you're allowed to cut your nails during Avelos. Now again, the halacha l'maisa is, we paskin, one should really not cut their nails for sure during Shiva. And even during Shloshim, there are those that are makbid. Now, what I will mention is that halacha l'maisa, the moment that your nails begin to interfere into the activities of daily living, one is permitted to trim them even during Shiva. Even during Shiva. What about Chol Hamoed? So as I mentioned before, the Mechaber paskins that you're really permitted to cut your nails during Chol Hamoed. The Ramah is machmir, and the Ramah says that ideally one should not do it unless, of course, it's for a mitzvah. So the case of for a mitzvah is for tvila, for immersion in the mikvah. Woman has to cut her nails in order to avoid any interposition, any chatzitza issues. We'll say, what's the idea? And many of us are familiar with this. There was already in Masechtas Brachas. What's the idea that if a pregnant woman walks on fingernails, cut nails, she's going to miscarry her child? So I will say, there's a beautiful Maharal. The Maharal in Chidushei Agodos explains that Adam and Chava, when they were first created, remember again, they didn't have clothing. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I don't know if that, the Maharal quotes in the Medrash, actually Rashi quotes this Medrash as well, that they had a finger-like, almost like covering, that protected their body from the elements, from other things in the world. They didn't have clothing, so there was like a finger-like covering that protected them from everything. When they ate from the Eitz Das Tov Hara, when they consumed from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that fingernail-like coating came off. It came off. It disappeared. It disappeared. Again, they replaced it then with clothing. So amazing if the Maharal writes in Chidushei Agodos, something incredible. Now remember again, it was Chava who was the initiator of the Chet. Because remember again, it was the Nachash, the snake, approached Chava. Chava gave Adam to eat of the fruit. Adam did not know what he was eating of. And therefore again, when a pregnant woman steps on a fingernail, a cut fingernail, which is a fingernail which has become detached from the body, it's a reminder of the original Chet of Chava. It's a reminder of the original Chet of the Eitz Das Tov Hara. And because of that, because it's a reminder, chas v'shalom, of that original chet, if a woman is pregnant, it places her b'makom sakana. Now, why a pregnant woman? Because remember again, one of the greatest, there was fallout from the chet. For Adam, it was bezeh sapecha tochal lechem. Parnasa is going to be a struggle. For Chava, the fallout of the chet was be'itzvi tel dibanim, that ultimately pregnancy is going to be difficult. So when a pregnant woman steps on the fingernail, it's a reminder of the chet of Chava, and could chas v'shalom cause her, chas v'shalom, to lose the pregnancy. That's how the Maharal in Chidushei Agodos explains this incredible idea. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Zug ba mechamson lefnei Rabbi. Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Rav. One time a pair of people came from Chamson to ask a shaila to Rabbi. Umar Zutra masni zug ba mechamson lefnei Rabbi. So Umar Zutra's version is, yes, a pair of people, right? A pair came from Chamson to Rabbi. Ubikshu mimenu, and they asked him tzipar nayim. They asked him about the halachos concerning cutting nails. Now there's an interesting machlokes over here. Are they asking about cutting nails on Chol Hamoed? Are they asking about cutting nails during Shiva? Or during Avelos, I should say. And he permitted them to go ahead and cut their nails. Permitted them to cut their nails. So the Gemara says, first white line, Vim bikshu men asafa, and had they asked about halachos concerning a mustache, hitir lahem, he would have permitted that to them as well. Now I will say, what does it mean if he would have asked about a mustache? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, Vim bikshu mimenu safa hayamatyu lehem kilomar ana chazina ledate ishalu legalech hasafa hayamatyu lehem de'ein ba mishum bal tashchis pe'azikanecha. So Rashi says over here that had they asked Rebbe about whether or not it's permitted to go ahead and cut the mustache. Now I will say, now the halacha is that one is not permitted to go ahead, pas zikanecha, one is not permitted to go ahead and Rash, lo sakifu pas roshchem, velo sashchis espas zekanecha. One is not permitted to round out the corners of their head, and one is not permitted to go ahead and destroy the corners of their beard. The idea of payas. So the Gemara seems to, according to Rashi seems to say that according to Rabbi, there's no prohibition with cutting the mustache. Just stam, no prohibition cutting your mustache. So Tosfos says over here, Bikshum and Safa Yeshaf Arish Ide Shinu Idumya Ditzi Parnai Benir Dahacha Perish Dafka La'achar Shiva. That they were asking Rabbi, when Rabbi says you could trim your mustache, that's a din in avelos, a din in mourning. That Rabbi was saying that halacha lamaisa, you can go ahead and cut your mustache, says Tosfos, after Shiva, and there's absolutely no problem with that. Okay? Shmuel says, Shmuel says, no, they did ask Rabbi about trimming the mustache, and Rabbi said it's mutter. So Amar Avito Safra Mishmei Dera Papa. Safa Mizavis Lizavis. What's the definition of a mustache? From one corner of the mouth to the other corner of the mouth. Amar Rabbi Ami, Ubesafa Ma'akeves. When do we allow you to trim your mustache? Now, the truth is, based on this conversation, it makes a lot more sense that they're talking about avelos. When are you permitted to go in and trim your mustache? Ma'akeves. When it gets in the way of your eating, right? So if your mustache is too long and it gets in the way of your eating, you're permitted to trim that even during avelos. Amram Nachman bar Yitzchak lididi kesafa ma'akeves tamid. Nachman bar Yitzchak said, me, I'm a bit fastidious. Rashi says, da'anina datai kala safek kesafa ma'akeves da'anina li datai. So apparently again, so Rabbi Ami says, I'm very fastidious. I'm a mifunak. So because of that, again, the mustache for me is always bothersome. So I'm permitted to trim it. I'm permitted to trim it. So both say, now that we quoted Avito, the scribe, in the name of Rav Papa, so we quote another member from nothing to do with our previous discussion. Paro shaybime Moshe, hu ama, uzakano ama, uparmashtako ama, vizeres. Paro, the Paro of Moshe Rabbeinu, he was an ama, his beard was an ama, parmashtako, Rashi says over here, amoso, is his aver, his male organ, was an ama and the zeres. L'kai mashenemar v'shofel anoshim yakum aleh. So both say, here's what's interesting. This obviously isn't literal, because first of all, Paro, what do you mean? Paro was one amma, he was one amma tall, his beard was one amma tall, and what does it mean that his male organ was taller than him? What's the pshat? So both say, so the Ben Yehoyada says something absolutely amazing. That the idea that the Gemara is trying to highlight over here is Paro was a little man. He was a little man. Not in actual height, but he was a little man. Now, both say, what's incredible about this is, what does it mean that he was a little man? The tragedy of Paro's story is that the tragedy of Paro, which was a tragedy of the Egyptian people, was that Paro allowed his own ego to go ahead and get in the way of his own interest and the interest of his nation. Sometimes the people with the biggest egos are actually the smallest of people. So what does it mean when therefore it says that his amma, his male member, was an amma and a zeros, was taller than his actual height? He was a lustful individual. He was a Baal Taiva. The idea that his Taivas got the best of him for everything. Now, both saying, here's what's interesting. Now, there's nowhere in the Paro story that we see him as being a lustful or desirous person of arayas, of an immoral individual, right? In other words, by setting this up, that the male member is taller than his actual stature, you're making him you're trying to highlight he's an immoral individual. So Rashi alludes to this when in the beginning of Parsha Shmos, it sounds like that Paro propositioned Shifra and Pua, Miriam and Yocheved, to engage in immoral activity. So there's a remez to it. I will say the idea is that when a person is lustful, right? When a person, think about this, if a person struggles with immorality, and if I'm an immoral individual, so the idea that when a person is immoral, everything is about satisfying my desires. Everything is about me. I want, I need, I desire. In other words, when everything is about me, my ego comes first. So when we say that Paro was a lustful individual, it's all pointing in the same direction. He was just an individual with an inflated sense of self, with an inflated ego, where his entire life was about him and about how to go ahead and engage in the process of self-aggrandizement. Everything is about my inflated sense of self. So both say, and the incredible part is Chazal tell us when a person has an inflated sense of self, people who have oversized egos are very small people. Because we know at the end of the day, an oversized ego, an inflated sense of self, often really masks a significant inferiority complex. Really highlights the fact that a person has a very low self-esteem, low self-worth, and they're masking that by projecting this self-aggrandized image. That was Paro. So the Gemara says something amazing about Amar Avi Tobias Parashay Moshe Amagushi Haya. Others say Paro was a sorcerer. So Rashi says over here, Rashi gives two interpretations, machashevos and gidufe. Either it means, again, a sorcerer or a blasphemer. Okay? Because ultimately, again, he's always focused on the Nile. So according to the first approach, that apparently his sorcery was somehow connected with the Nile. According to the second approach, the idea was that he blasphemed HaKadosh Baruch Hu because he said, I made the Nile. The Nile is right, I created the Nile, and he denied HaKadosh Baruch Hu's involvement in any part of creation. Okay, incredible. And these are the people who are permitted to go and launder their clothing on Chalamayid. So the Gemara says, So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan says, if a person only has one garment, he is permitted to launder it during Chalamayid. So the Gemara says, Maser Rabbi Yirmiyah, Elu mechabsin b'moed. These are the people who are permitted to go ahead and launder during Chalamayid. So the Gemara says, Maser Rabbi Yirmiyah, Elu mechabsin b'moed. Here are the people who are permitted to go ahead and launder during Chalamayid. Sorry, I'm trying to get all of this situated correctly. These are the people who are permitted to go ahead and launder during Chalamayid. Haba Medinas Hayam. Those ultimately, again, who come from overseas. That's the Gemara said, if you come from overseas, you're permitted to go ahead and launder your clothing. So we'll say, so now, Hani in, Misha Eno Ela Chalak Echalo. It sounds like only if you come back from overseas that you're allowed to go ahead, or one of the other exceptions, or one of the other circumstances that the Mishnah said. But again, otherwise, it doesn't sound like you would be permitted to go ahead and launder your clothing. To which the Gemara says, Amr le Rabbi Yaakov, the Rabbi Yirmiyah, Asar b'lecha masnisin afagav de'islei trei umetanfi. No. What the Mishnah is saying is that Allah Chalamais, even if you had two articles of clothing, but you didn't have a chance to launder them before Chalamayid because you literally just arrived back home right before Chalamayid, that Allah Chalamayid, you can go ahead and launder both of them, even on Chalamayid. But the idea is that certainly one who only has one article of clothing is certainly permitted to launder them on Chalamayid itself. Shalach Rabbi Yitzchak, and both say that indeed is Allah Chalamayid. If a person, in general, although we have a limitation or a restriction on laundering on Chalamayid, if all you have is, you could always launder if you need it. We've seen this before already. Anything you need on Chalamayid, you're permitted to launder on Chalamayid. It's just things that you don't need that you should avoid laundering. Shalach Rav Yitzchak bar Yaakov bar Yurim Mishmeit Rabbi Yochanan. Kli pishtan, mutar lechabse mechol shamoid. So linen clothing or linen articles, you're permitted to go and launder them on Chalamayid. Master Rav Rava says, matpechos hayadayim, hand towels, umatpechos hasaparim, barbers cloths. Amad Yud Chesam Base 18b. So Hani in Klei Pishtan Lo. So the Mishnah only makes it sound like these are things that you could launder, but ultimately again Klei Pishtan, linen clothing, linen articles you can't launder. No. The Mishnah is not coming to limit you. In other words, the Mishnah is even allowing you to go ahead and launder other clothing. In other words, I will say, the Mishnah is giving examples. Rashi says, Afilu de Sharmini, Kiloma Hamatechos, de Sharmini and Kegon Semer, Afagav the Nofish, Tircha Shari Lechabes, Aval Shar Kilim, the Sharminin Lo, Aval Klepishton, Shari Lechabes. So ultimately, again, Abai is coming to say, the Mishnah is not coming to tell you that you can't launder linen clothing. Amar Bar Hedjel, Ledidi, Chazi Liyama Shal Tiveria, the Mafki Mishkali, the Mani Kisna, Bechola de Moada. So listen to this, what Bar Hedjel says, I myself saw that in the Sea of Tiveria, in the Kinneret, there were baskets filled with linen clothing which were being laundered. So again, Bar Hedjel says, you see from here, I saw it myself. People are laundering baskets of linen clothing. Maskif la Abaye said, Man leimalon de baratzon chachamim avdi, tamashla baratzon chachamim avdi. To which the Gemara Abaye says, just because you saw it doesn't mean people are conducting themselves in accordance with the halacha. In other words, maybe you saw it. I'm not debating that you saw it, but lamaisa, who says that they were actually doing the right thing? Incredible. So both say, and again, halacha lamaisa, whenever it comes to laundering, is that whatever you need for chalamayid, one is permitted to go ahead and do. Beautiful. Abba say Mishnah Yud Chesamad Beis 18b. Veilukosin b'moed. These are the things that you're allowed to write on chalamayid. Because remember again, on chalamayid, one is supposed to really abstain from engaging in work, which includes writing. So what are you allowed to write on chalamayid? Veilukosin b'moed. Kiddushay nashim. Right, we'll see exactly what this means. Documents of betrothal, Gittin, right? Gittin, which Rashi says over here, shakasa b'shtar hari at nikudesh asli isha niknis b'shtar. Okay, so Rashi says, literally again, it means a document of betrothal. Remember again, isha niknis begimel drachim. There are three ways that you could affect kiddushin: kesef, shtar, and bia. See here, you're affecting kiddushin through a shtar. Gittin, divorce documents. Shovrin are receipts. Now, say usually a shover is a reference to if a woman gets her ksuva. Let's say a couple gets divorced, husband pays the ksuva. Ultimately, again, he gets a receipt that he paid the ksuva. Shovrin, daitiki. So daitikin, we're going to see is a will, but it's a specific kind of will that a person writes on their deathbed. Matana, gifts for documents. Documents for gifts. Pruzbolin, so we'll say pruzbol, which was when a person hands over their debt to a beis din before Shemitah, in order that Shemitah doesn't wipe out the debt. Igros shum, documents of valuation. So we'll say, so this often is done by beis din, especially when beis din is helping to go ahead and divide up an estate. So they'll go ahead and evaluate different pieces of property in order to go ahead and disperse the estate amongst brothers. The igros mazon, or documents of support. So this is a situation where, let's say, a man marries a woman and she has a daughter. So she has a daughter, and the husband agrees to go ahead and support this daughter. They would paper that agreement. Shtari chalitza, document of chalitza. Miunim. So we'll say miun. Remember again, is a mother or a brother have the ability to go ahead and marry off a minor daughter or sister. So, but again, that's only rabbinic marriage. It's not biblical marriage. Like a father has the ability to mekadesh his daughter midoraisa. Ultimately, again, mother and the brother can marry off the daughter, but it's only dirabanan. She therefore has the ability to quote unquote be memayin or be mema to refuse the marriage, in which case the marriage itself dissolves. That's called the shtar miyun. Shtari Berurin. So we'll say Shtari Berurin. Ultimately, again, Rashi says over here, Biru Bezin Chelik Zeh Lazeh V'Chelik Zeh Lazeh. So again, these are also a type of when Beis Din divides a property. Beis Din shows this portion for this brother, this portion for that brother. Gezeros Beis Din, Shtari Berurin could also sometimes mean when people choose Dayanim to sit on a Beis Din. Okay, we'll see. Gezeros Beis Din. Gzeros Beis Din, ultimately decrees of Beis Din can be written on chalamayid. The igros shal roshos, and ultimately again, igros shal roshos means decrees of the government. So these are all things which can be written on chalamayid, and you could see again based on these things, these are items that are timely and important, and I really pose a concern that if you don't paper them now, it could really lead to trouble in the future. Says the Gemara, Amar Shmuel, Mutter la'aris isha b'chalosh moed, shema yikadmenu acher. Incredible. Shmuel says, remember, we already saw before, you're not permitted to get married. Nisuin is asra and chalamayid. Remember again, why is that? Ein ma'arvin simcha b'simcha, because we don't mix one simcha with another simcha. Yet, what do we see from here? That erusin, right, betrothal is permitted. So the Gemara says, why? Shami kadmenu acher. Because what's the concern? If you don't chaparain and betroth this woman now, someone else is going to betroth her, right? When you find a good woman, you don't let her go, right? So betroth her. So therefore, Chazal allowed you, essentially, Abosai, what it's really saying is like this, that if you find a wonderful spouse, you find a wonderful woman, who is your bashert, who is the other part of your neshama. So ultimately, if you don't go ahead and betroth her now, it's a davar ha'ovid. It's a davar ha'ovid. It's something that can be lost. Maybe someone else will realize how special she is and ultimately beat you to the chuppah. And therefore, halacha l'maaseh Chazal allowed you to do erusin on Chol Hamoed. So the Gemara says, "Misayele ve'elu kosim hamoed kiddushay noshim." We'll say this seems to support this idea because what does the Mishnah say? What are you allowed to write on Chol Hamoed? Kiddushay noshim, documents of betrothal. My love shtari kiddushin mamish. Does this not refer to actual shtar kiddushin? Right? Hari'at mikudesh asli, an actual document of betrothal. Maybe not. Lo shtari psikta. It could also say or psiksa. So we'll say it could actually refer to ultimately documents of financial arrangements that are a precursor to marriage. Ukit Rav Gidol, Amarav, Dam Rav Gidol, Amarav, Kama atanosin lebincha, kach v'kach, Kama atanosin lebitcha, kach v'kach, Amdu v'kidshu, Kanu hein dvarim haniknin ba'amira. So I'll say, interesting enough, this is what we call today tinoim. That often what would happen is right before kiddushin, families would agree. So the family of the bride would agree to give X, the family of the groom would agree to give Y. They would agree, they would shake, they would paper it, and ultimately then kiddushin would occur. Then kiddushin would occur. And the Gemara says, interestingly, right, and these are actually things, even without a document, these agreements ultimately become binding. So what the Gemara is just pointing out over here is that halacha l'maisa, shtari kiddushin could mean two things. Shtari kiddushin could literally mean going ahead and writing a document, which is the vehicle of kiddushin, but it could also be a reference to writing a document which represents the financial agreements between the families as well. So the Gemara says, so the ein nosin nashim amoed lo b'sos lo amonos lo yam lo v'nei shesimcha lo. Supposed to listen to this. Halacha l'maisa. We saw this before. We don't get married. No nisuin on Chol Hamoed, not besulos, not almanos. We don't do yibum. Why? Because this is a simcha. We saw the sugya, and remember again, the simcha of Yom Tiv is supposed to be the simcha of Yom Tiv. Ein ma'arvin simcha v'simcha. We do not mix a different kind of simcha into the simcha of Chol Hamoed. However, the Gemara says hala ares shari. But I will say erusin, which is betrothal, which is the first stage of marriage, which is really affected by the man. Well, again, either through kasef, through giving a woman an item of value, bia, which is not done anymore, and shtar. And ultimately, again, a document. So the Gemara says, you see from the fact that it says that nisuin is aser, tells you that erusin is mutter, to which the Gemara says, maybe not. Lomi by kamer, lomi by the aris lo kaveh mitzvah, alafi li salami to kaveh mitzvah aser. So maybe you say this, no, maybe it means like this. Nisun is a mitzvah. Erusin, the Gemara says, is not even a mitzvah. So if you can't do nisuin, which is a mitzvah, maybe for sure you can't do erusin, which is a mitzvah. Tashma, the Tani Rabbi Shmuel, ma'arsin, avalo konsin. No, therefore, we'll say explicit. Erusin is permitted. I will say this halacha l'maisa. You could do erusin. You could betroth the woman on Chol Hamoed, but you can't do nisuin. However, with erusin, there is one important limitation. Vein osin suudas erusin, but you can't make a suda. We'll say very often, after erusin, they would have a beautiful celebratory meal. You can't make that meal on Chol Hamoed. Lilo miyamin, you can't do yibum, mipnei shesimcha hilo shmamina. So we'll say, you see from here something very interesting. Nisuin is aser, erusin is mutter, but no celebratory meal. That's already tuma. That's already not necessary, right? Erusin is permitted, but only erusin by itself. And I will say, and why is erusin permitted? Why is it permitted? Shema yekadmenu acher. Because maybe someone else will see that, wow, this is a really incredible Eishes Chayil, and ultimately go ahead and beat you to the chuppah, right? We don't want you to lose out. It's a davar ha'ovid, and therefore you're permitted to go ahead and do erusin on Chol Hamoed. To which the Gemara says something amazing. Umi amar Shmuel, Shema yekadmenu acher? Are you really concerned about that? That someone else, I found a wonderful woman. So now the Gemara says, do erusin now on Chol Hamoed. Why? Because maybe someone else is going to chaper, right? Maybe someone else is going to sweep her off her feet, right? Maybe someone is going to wine and dine her and she's going to end up marrying this guy instead of me. Is that true? V'ha'amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Listen to what Shmuel said. B'chol yom v'yom bas kol yotzes v'omeres. Bas ploni leploni, sada ploni leploni. But I will say every single day a baskol comes out and says, this woman is going to marry this man, this person is going to acquire this field. The idea being that who you marry is min hashamayim. Who you marry ultimately is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, just like your parnasa is from Hashem. This field goes to this person. So who I marry is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well. Now, if who I marry is from Hashem, then again, why should I have to rush to do Erusin on Chalamayid? Even if I don't do Erusin on Chalamayid, ultimately, again, my Bashert is my Bashert. So why should I do Erusin on Chalamayid? This is an incredible Gemara. Ela Shema Yikadmenu Acher Berachamim. It's true that my Bashert is my Bashert, but maybe someone else will daven for my Bashert to become their Bashert, right? Maybe someone else will daven, right? I'm supposed to marry Rachel, right? And again, maybe someone else is going to go ahead and daven that they want to marry Rachel. And even though again HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed that Rachel is my Bashert, if Reuven goes ahead and he davens that Rachel should be his Bashert, maybe his tefillos will be so powerful that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will allow Rachel to be his and not mine. It's incredible. So the Gemara, listen to this. Ki had Rava Shamilahu Gavra Debai Rachami. So Rava once heard a guy who was davening to Hashem. Va'amar Tizdami li planisa. And he was davening, Hashem, please let me marry this particular woman. He was davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he should be able to marry he had in mind a particular woman. So Amar So Rava said, Lo ti bay rachim yachi. Don't daven like that. Why? Ichaz yilacha lo azlam ilach. Because if the woman who you're davening for, if she's your bashert, she's going to be yours. She's going to be yours. Ultimately, again, if it's meant to be, if it's bashert, then ultimately, again, you and this particular woman will get together. Ve'ilo. But if this woman is not meant for you, and you're davening for her, and then you don't end up getting her, you don't end up marrying her, kafarta b'Hashem, you're going to end up losing your emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're going to be so disillusioned that HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't give you what you want, that chas v'shalom, you may lose your belief in the Creator. Look at Rashi. Kavarta b'Hashem ba'amana deka'amar d'lo mesayetz alusa klum. We're going to end up saying, tefillah does nothing. Prayer does nothing. Here I daven for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to marry this woman. She's wonderful. She's perfect for me. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't answer my tefillahs. What do you see from here? That tefillah doesn't work. Tefillah doesn't work. I will say, by the way, what an incredible Gemara. So Rava was saying to this man, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But if it's not meant to be, you're going to become so disillusioned that you don't get what you want, that you could chas v'shalom end up losing your faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I will say, what a profound insight into tefillah. First of all, just in general in life, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. You know, when we daven, and this is an incredible yisod in Hilchos tefillah, when we daven, the way that a Jew should daven is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm asking you for this, and this, A, B, C, and D. I want all of these things. But every single time you ask something for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you always have to daven with humility. And humility says, this is what I'm asking for because I really, really want it. And I really think it's good for me. But I also realize that sometimes I don't know what's good for me. And the Bible said it's an incredibly important yesod. Sometimes I'm convinced that this is what I need. I'm convinced that this is what should be. I'm convinced. I'm 1,000% sure. And the Bible said this is everything. How often does it happen? We daven for refuah shalema, and we're convinced that this person, it must be this person. Now again, it's human nature. We see things through our lens. So I daven for someone who's sick. I daven for parnasa. I daven for shidduchim. I daven for children. I'm convinced this is what should be. Because from my vantage point, it's so clear that this person should have a refuah. This person should have a parnasa. This person should have this. This person should have that. I need this. I need that. And again, of course, that's how we daven. We daven from our vantage point. But I think that every tefillah has to be laced with a certain level of humility. And what humility says is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm asking you for what I think I need or for what I think that person needs because this is how I see it. But exactly, this is how I see it. But dear HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and ultimately I trust you to do whatever is right. And this is how we have to daven. Because if we don't daven this way with this little caveat of humility, then when we don't get what we want, which is an inevitable reality in the human condition, we run the risk of becoming disillusioned. we run the risk of becoming jaded. I davened for this, and I davened with so much kavanah, and I took on this, and I did this, and I changed this, and I improved this, and I stopped doing this, which is all incredible, and I still didn't get what I want. So what's the point? So and it happens. People reach out to Hashem for all kinds of things, and they don't get what they want because sometimes that happens in life, and they become disillusioned. Rava said, don't daven like that. Daven for what you want. Daven for what you think you need. But at the end of the day, always lace your tefillos with a healthy dose of humility. And that healthy dose of humility says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is what I think I need. This is what I want. And this is what I believe that I need. But I also know at the end of the day, I don't always know what I need. Or I don't always know what the other needs. So I leave it to you to run your world in the way that it should be run. And I really daven for the strength to accept your answers, for the strength to accept your decisions. Because sometimes your answers are not the ones I was looking for. And sometimes your decisions are not the ones I had hoped you would make. But I have to learn to trust in you. I have to learn to put my emunah in you. I have to learn to live with a certain degree of humility, that what I think I need and what the world needs is sometimes not what I need and not what the world needs. That's what Rava was trying to tell this individual. Such an incredible, I will say, profound Gemara. Legabe hilchos tefillah, the hashkafa of tefillah. So the Gemara ends up touching at the story. He says, Basar hachi, shami dekamar. Afterwards, Rava heard this same guy davening, O ihu limos mikama, O ihi tamos mikame. That the same guy was davening, Kadosh Baruch Hu, if you're not going to let me marry this woman, then here's what I ask. Either let me die before her, I shouldn't see her marry someone else, or let her die before me. Don't let her end up marrying someone else. Crazy tefillah. Amar lei, lava mina lecha. Rava says to the guy, did I not tell you, lo tiboya la demils achi? Don't daven like this. This is crazy. You love this woman so much. So here what's happening. This guy is so in love with this woman. So first he says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shalom, please let me marry this woman. And Rava says, no, don't do that. If it's meant to be, she's your bashar, you're going to marry her. And if not, if you don't get what you want, you run the risk of becoming disillusioned with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then he hears the same guy down HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to marry her, but if you don't let me marry her, either let me die before her so I won't see her get married, or let her die before me so she won't marry someone else. So both say, the first part of the tefillah you can understand a little bit. He's so like love struck with her, right, or for her, about her, that he can't bear to see her marry someone else. You say, what does it mean that he davens, let her die before she marries this other guy? So both say it's an interesting yesod that sometimes when we say that we love people, what we really love is we love ourselves. And I love what this other person does for me. This is a very important yesod in relationships, that a person has to do a little bit of a self-check. When I say I love you to someone, is it that I really love them, or I love them because of what they do for me? And there's an incredible nafkamina. There's an incredible practical difference. What's the nafkamina? When that person doesn't do for me, or that person doesn't do exactly what I wanted them to do. So then you begin to see what true love is. If I really love that person, so the love is there even when they don't do for me what I wanted, or even when they don't behave the way that I wanted, or even when they don't perform exactly how I wanted. But if really I only love them because of what they do for me, then the moment they stop doing for me is the moment that I stop really loving them. It's an incredible litmus test in the love, because all too often when we say, it's like, you hear people say this, I love pizza. Really, you love pizza? You love pizza? You have such a meaningful connection with pizza? What is it, with the dough, with the cheese, with the tomato sauce? What is it exactly that you're in love? No, I don't love pizza. I love me, but I love what pizza does for me. I love football. It's Sunday, so it's kidai. I don't know if there's a game today, but it's kidai to get this in. I love football. Really? What is it? What is it? The shape of the ball? The fact that there's grown men in tight pants jumping on? Which part of it? The players who get obscene salaries? Which part of it do you love? No, I don't love. What I mean is, I love what the sport does to me. It gives me pleasure, which is fine. All kidding aside, good. I don't love. I love me. I love me. So I love what football. I love what the sport does for me. But what's dangerous is when you say you love your wife. So what do you mean? Do you say that I love you? I love you for who you are. I love you for what you do. I love you for what you accomplish. I love you for just the person, for the midos you have. Or is it chas v'shalom, I love you because of what you do for me? And that's so dangerous. That's so dangerous. Because then I don't really love you. I don't really love you. I love me. I love me. And you give more to me, so that's why I love you. And also we have to be so careful to stay far away from that type of love, because that's a dangerous love. Because the moment then my spouse stops doing what I want her to do, how I want her to do it, or when I need her to do it, is the moment chas v'shalom that sometimes that love evaporates. We have to work on a love not because of what my spouse does for me. And by the way, it's not just spouse. It's my spouse, it's my children, it's my parents, but almost like an ava she'ena taluya b'davar. A love because I really love you. I really love you. Of course I appreciate and I like the things you do for me, but that's not the basis, that's not the basis, that's not the foundation of the love. Incredible Gemara. The Gemara goes right. Amar Rav Mishum Ruven ben Itztrabili. Min haTorah, min hanavim, min haksuvim, me Hashem ish liisha. So me Hashem isha liish. So we'll say there are from Torah, Navim, and Ksuvim, we see a raya that HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes ahead and creates shidduchim, that he decides a bashert, that a shidduch, a marriage, a relationship is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Min haTorah d'chsiv, vaya'an lavan ubesol vayomer me Hashem yatzah davar. It's interesting, Parshas Chayei Sarah, interesting raya. From Lavan and Besuel, when Eliezer comes to find a wife for Yitzchak, and Eliezer tells everything that happened when he found Rivka, and Lavan and Besuel, Rishoim, said me Hashem yatzah davar. It's clear that this shidduch, this match, is from the Ribono Shel Olam. So you see from here in Torah that shidduchim ultimately again are from Hashem. Min hanavim d'chsiv va'aviv v'imo lo yadu ki me Hashem hui. So ultimately from the Nevi'im, this is by Shimshon. By Shimshon, his parents did not realize that ultimately again this shidduch was from Hashem. Min haksuvim d'chsiv bayis v'hon nachalas avos ume Hashem isha maskelas. Right? Ultimately again, your home and your wealth could be an inheritance from your father or from your family, but from Hashem, isha maskelas is a wise woman. That ultimately again, there are many things that are based in our hishtadlus, many things that are based in our effort, but who you marry, the relationship you create, that's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now again, I want to be clear. It doesn't mean that shidduchim don't require siyata d'shmaya, right? It doesn't mean that a shidduch doesn't require divine assistance. Of course it does. Of course it does. But lamaisa, at the end of the day, that who we marry, our bashert, right? The woman or the man who I am supposed to, that's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's from the Ribono Shel Olam. Incredible. So I'll just read one more line that will stop because I realize I want to get this in. Tana Amra Beruvein ben Itztrabuli. Ein Adam nechshad b'davar ela imkin aso. So this is an interesting yesod that a person is not suspected about something. So I'll say, you know what? Actually, we'll stop over here for today. We'll stop here. We'll pick up in Yahrzeit Hashem with this sugya of chashad, of being suspected of something. Again, we'll get to that tomorrow. We'll say. It's an incredible schos. Yahrzeit Hashem, I look forward to learning with all of you. Tomorrow, Monday, Rabbi Kalman Eliezer is going to be giving this. I'll be traveling back. I'll be back in Yahrzeit Hashem for Shir live in person on Tuesday morning. And as much as breaks my heart to have to leave Eretz Yisrael, but really, mamish breaks my heart to have to leave Eretz Yisrael. But I very much the nechama I have, one of the nechamas I have. Addition, of course, is seeing my mishpacha, is being able to learn with all of you. I look forward to continuing that on Tuesday morning. Wishing everyone a wonderful day and shkayach everyone.